the Hollywood Unapologetic Podcast with Orlando Delbert, Filmmaking Essentials. Today, we're jumping straight into the world of film education, really looking at film schools.
Right.
You're keen to get a solid grasp on cinema essentials kind of quickly. And, well, looking at the movies film schools use seems like a pretty smart way to do it.
Definitely.
So we're going to figure out which films are, standard viewing for filmmakers starting out. And maybe more importantly, what are the key things these films actually teach?
Exactly. Think of it like a shortcut to the foundations of filmmaking. We're not just going to list movies.
No.
We want to pull out the core lessons, their place in history, the techniques they introduced, their artistic style, and why they're still so important for anyone who's serious about film.
Okay. And to make sure we're getting a good picture, we've looked at a few different places. We've got stuff from the Script Lab, the New York Film Academy, dipped into a Reddit thread where people were debating intro class movies, probably some filmmakers in there.
Likely, yeah.
And, of course, the AFI Top 100 list for those, consensus picks.
Can't ignore those.
And we'll try to bring in some insights from sources like Pollyanna's Tear-Soaked Battlefields of Hollywood and the Hollywood Unapologetic Channel 2, just for that industry context.
Good idea. Gives it that real-world grounding.
And maybe just a quick thought on AI at the end, how that might fit in. So, okay, if we're talking foundations, where do film schools usually begin? What's lesson one?
Well, often, they start right at the beginning, early cinema. Got to establish the language first.
Makes sense.
And two examples that pop up again and again are The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, that's 1920, and the Odessa Steps sequence.
Ah, Caligari. The one with the crazy tilted sets. Looks like a nightmare.
Exactly. And that's the point, isn't it? It's not just visually wild. It teaches a core idea about visual storytelling. Using the mise en scène, everything in the frame, the sets, the props, the lighting, to actually show the character's inner state. Their psychology.
Ah, okay. So the look isn't just background, it's part of the story itself.
Precisely. It showed how design could be narrative. And the Odessa Steps, everyone knows the editing is famous.
Yeah, super fast cuts, chaos.
Right, but it fundamentally showed the power of montage, how editing could create this intense emotion, mess with your sense of time, really grab the audience.
So these early filmmakers weren't just like pointing a camera. They were actively shaping how you felt using visuals and cuts.
Absolutely. And as American film started, taking over globally in the early 20th century.
What changed then?
Well, you saw techniques becoming more standard, more widely used to tell stories better. Things like using artificial lighting deliberately.
To create mood.
Yeah, mood, guiding your eye, that sort of thing. And more point-of-view shots started appearing.
Putting you right in the character's shoes.
Exactly. Makes it more immersive. These became like basic tools every filmmaker needed.
Okay, building blocks established. So after early cinema, where do students usually go next?
The golden age of Hollywood is obviously huge. Take Casablanca, 1942. It's always on the AFI list.
A classic.
Total classic. But for film school, it's a masterclass in efficient storytelling, great acting, just solid craft all around. But it's also interesting because of its context, right? It was made partly to nudge America towards joining World War II.
Really? So film is persuasion.
Yeah, it shows how films can be art, but also sometimes kind of propaganda, entertainment, and influence.
That's a really interesting layer.
Okay,
fast forward a bit. Hollywood's second golden age. What films represent that?
Well, the Script Lab points to The Godfather, 1972, as kicking that off. And they call it an endarkenment, which is kind of interesting.
Endarkenment, why?
Because suddenly you could have a mafia boss, a morally gray character as the hero of this epic story. That was a shift.
Yeah, not your typical white hat hero.
Not at all. And another thing about The Godfather is Coppola worked so closely with Mario Puzo, the author. Puzo even got a co-writing credit.
Showing the importance of the original book.
Yeah, and how adapting something faithfully can really shape the film's vision. The collaboration matters.
Okay, so we've got serious drama, crime epics. But film school isn't all heavy stuff, is it? Yeah. People need some fun, too.
Oh, totally. That Reddit discussion brought up films like Singin' in the Rain.
Love that one.
The Wizard of Oz, Bringing Up Baby. These get suggested as later options.
Screwball comedy, musicals.
Exactly. They show brilliance in different genres. The joy of a musical, the fantasy of Oz, the fast-paced wit of Screwball. It shows that great filmmaking comes in all shapes and sizes.
Right. Got to understand the whole range. Okay, let's shift gears. A huge moment in film history. The French New Wave. Breathless always comes up. Why is that film such a big deal?
Breathless, 1960. Yeah, it's a landmark. Someone on Reddit mentioned it really pushed cinema towards a style that feels much more, well, modern to us now.
How so?
Its use of jump cuts was radical.
Those jarring cuts within a scene.
Yeah, it just broke the rules of that smooth, invisible editing Hollywood was doing. It felt more edgy, more self-aware, a totally different feel.
Must have felt really disruptive back then.
Oh, definitely. And within the new wave, you had different voices too, like Eric Romer.
Right, his style was different, wasn't it?
Yeah, Romer was key, but kind of distinct. While some others maybe moved away from the initial rule-breaking vibe, Romer arguably stayed closer to that personal expression idea.
How did his films differ?
His stuff is all about the characters' thoughts, their emotions, lots of talking, long conversations, not so much about big plots.
Ah, more internal.
Very internal. My Night at Maud's is probably his best known, though, some people find his films slow, the characters a bit detached.
So it sparks debate about what makes a film engaging.
Totally. Does it always have to be about plot? Or can it be about exploring ideas and feelings through conversation? Romer makes you ask that.
Interesting. And another new wave film people mention, but maybe with more energy, is Pure Le Fou.
Yes, Pure Le Fou. That one's pure energy, 1965. It's got that playful, almost anarchic spirit of the new wave. Lots of color, breaking rules. It is often seen as really inspiring, showing how free cinema could be.
Cool. Okay, so early days, Hollywood's golden ages, French Revolution. What's the next big stop on the film school tour?
Well, you get into the late 60s, the 70s, New Hollywood. This was a time of big changes, socially, politically, and film reflected that.
How so?
Things get a bit more cynical, maybe, more questioning. Like that Pollyanna's tear-soaked battlefield source suggests it kind of moved away from the old studio optimism.
Got grittier.
Yeah, exactly. Think of Midnight Cowboy, 1969. Unconventional characters, pretty raw realism. That's pure New Hollywood.
A different vibe entirely.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk specific directors. Masters of the craft. Stanley Kubrick has to be on the list.
Oh, absolutely. Kubrick is essential. His precision, the impact of his innovations, you just have to study him.
2001 comes to mind immediately.
Right. 2001, A Space Odyssey. Crucial, especially if you're interested in AI, in film.
Yeah.
HAL 9000 is still iconic.
And technically.
Technically, yeah. The New York Film Academy notes its use of 70mm Cinerama, these widescreen formats that just created this incredibly immersive experience, pushing the technology.
Yeah. And then there's The Shining.
Yep, The Shining. Horror masterpiece. And famous for its early, really expert use of the Steadicam.
That smooth, gliding camera.
That's the one. Creates that deeply unsettling feeling, doesn't it? Following Danny through the hotel. Creepy. Kubrick was a master of using tech for effect.
Definitely. Okay, another director with a powerful, unique voice. Spike Lee. Do the Right Thing must be required viewing.
It absolutely should be. Do the Right Thing, 1989. It's just a landmark. The New York Film Academy points out how it blends social realism, really tackling tough issues, but amplifies it with such expressive style.
How does it do that?
Through everything. The vibrant sets, the dynamic camera work by Ernest Dickerson, Ruth Carter's costumes, and, of course, the music. Public Enemy's Fight the Power isn't just on the soundtrack. It's like another character in the film.
Wow. So all the elements working together.
Yeah, it's a masterclass in using the whole cinematic toolkit to talk about something important and complex.
Powerful stuff. Okay, switching gears again. Akira Kurosawa, another giant. What do students learn from him?
Kurosawa is amazing visually. Take high and low. It's brilliant at using, stark contrast, like light and shadow.
To create mood.
Mood, tension, yeah. And his composition, how he arranges things in the frame, is so deliberate. It tells you about power, about morality, just through the visuals.
So learning to read the visual language.
Exactly. How images convey meaning just as much as words.
Speaking of specific techniques, I read something about the opening of the limey being used in classes.
Ah, yeah, that came up on Reddit. Apparently, the first 15 minutes of the Limey Soderbergh film from '99 often get shown in production classes.
Why?
To show the power of editing, how you can manipulate time and structure, cut between different moments, and build this really unique, compelling narrative feel just through the cuts.
Editing as storytelling. Got it. And what about comedy? Is there like a gold standard people point to?
Well, the Script Lab basically calls some, it hot, maybe the greatest screen comedy ever.
Billy Wilder, 1959. Can't argue much there.
Right. But beyond just being hilarious, the source notes it was also kind of ahead of its time, exploring themes around sexual identity.
Really? Back in 59?
Yeah, which makes it feel surprisingly relevant even now. Shows that even lighter films can dig into complex social ideas.
That's cool how older films can still speak to today.
Yeah.
What about purely technical stuff like sound design? Any key examples?
The sources we looked at didn't specifically list sound design staples for film school, but it's definitely taught. Instructors would likely use films with amazing sound work.
Like what?
Maybe something recent like Sound of Metal, which totally immerses you in the main character's hearing loss experience.
Oh yeah, that was intense.
Or even going back to the early Star Wars films. Ben Burtt's sound design was revolutionary, creating those iconic sounds from scratch. Shows how sound builds the world.
Right, sound isn't just background noise. Okay, let's think about independent American cinema. Daughters of the Dust came up. What's significant there?
Oh, Daughters of the Dust, 1991. Yeah, the New York Film Academy calls it a classic of indie film, and rightly so.
What's the story?
It's told poetically, through the eyes of an unborn child, about this Gula family in the Sea Islands around 1900 dealing with leaving their traditions behind. Explores cultural heritage, conflict.
Sounds unique.
It is, and the source praises Julie Dash's direction. She won awards for it, the performances, and especially Arthur Jaffe's cinematography. It's breathtakingly beautiful. A vital film for seeing diverse stories told differently.
So a real counterpoint to mainstream Hollywood. We touched on editing differences earlier, classic Hollywood versus Breathless and the French New Wave. Can you expand on that contrast?
Sure. It's fundamentally about rhythm and flow. Classic Hollywood editing generally wanted to be invisible, right? Smooth cuts, keeping you lost in the story.
Seamless.
Seamless, yeah. The French New Wave, especially in Breathless, did the opposite. Jump cuts, non-linear moments. It deliberately broke that smoothness.
Why?
To draw attention to the fact you're watching a film, maybe, to create a different energy, more fragmented, maybe more immediate. It just feels different. Shows how editing style drastically changes the viewing experience.
Definitely highlights the choices filmmakers make. Now, beyond the well-known classics and movements, do film schools show stuff that's, well, weirder, more challenging?
Oh, for sure. That Reddit thread had a great list of films that stuck with students, sometimes not in a comfortable way.
Like what?
Things like The Conformist, Persona Bergman's really intense psychological film, The Battle of Algiers, which feels like a documentary. Two-Lane Blacktop, that animated sci-fi fantastic planet. Jim Jarmusch's Stranger Than Paradise, the documentary Sherman's March.
Quite a mix.
Yeah, and some really tough ones like Titicut Follies, the Asylum documentary, or Derek Jarman's Blue, which is just a blue screen with narration. These films push buttons, break conventions, explore difficult stuff.
Sounds like they'd spark some serious discussions.
That's often the point, right? To make you think, react, question what film can even be. And it's not just older stuff either.
No.
Well, the Reddit thread mentioned Black Panther showing up in some classes when it was huge.
Oh, interesting. So contemporary blockbusters, too.
Yeah, if they're culturally significant or showcase current techniques. And then there was the mention of Martyrs.
The horror film.
Yeah, the extreme French horror film, with a note like, holy shit, why?
Okay, so maybe pushing boundaries pretty far sometimes.
Seems like it. And the piano teacher also got to mention dark themes, apparently underappreciated. So yeah, exposure to a wide, sometimes uncomfortable range.
It sounds like quite the education.
Yeah.
But it's not just about watching, is it? You have to analyze this stuff critically.
Exactly right. The big piece of advice that kept coming up, especially on Reddit, was watch the film, then learn about its history, its context, the filmmaker.
Understand the why.
Understand the why. Why did they make those choices? What was happening culturally, politically? And then watch it again. That deeper understanding is crucial.
And that connects to those other sources like Pollyanna and Hollywood Unapologetic, getting the real picture.
Precisely. They stress needing a realistic view of the industry, not just the shiny surface. Understanding the history, the context, the struggles behind these films. That's part of truly getting the art and the craft.
Okay, so critical viewing, context. It's key. If someone listening wants to start exploring these kinds of important films, where should they begin? Any good starting points?
Yeah, a few were mentioned. The AFI Top 100 list is always a solid bet. Same for the Sight and Sound polls. They give you films with real critical weight.
Okay.
Someone on Reddit also suggested looking at Oscar nominees and winners from years before you were born. Kind of gives you snapshots of different times in cinema.
That's a neat idea.
And, finding curated lists can help too, like that Letterboxd list someone shared of films they actually watched in film school. It gives you a path to follow.
It's about building your own mental map of cinema history, isn't it?
Exactly. Understanding how the language evolved, how filmmakers talk to each other across generations.
Now, thinking about all these films,
Yeah.
when they were made, how they're used now,
Yeah.
it does make you wonder,
Yeah, how do these films, both as products of their time and as teaching tools now, reflect how Hollywood itself keeps changing? That Filmmaking Essentials source hinted at that.
Right. And maybe what are the timeless things? What principles of storytelling or filmmaking seem to last, no matter the era or the tech?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And speaking of tech, just briefly, what about AI? Any thoughts on how that might fit into film education in the future?
Yeah, is it going to replace watching Citizen Kane?
Probably not. Our sources mostly talked about AI in production, distribution, stuff like that. But you could imagine AI tools maybe helping analyze these classics down the line.
Oh.
Maybe helping with research, finding patterns in visual styles, perhaps even tailoring learning paths about film history for individual students. Who knows? But, the real value of these films and the human artistry, the insights into us, that's still going to rely on human eyes, human hearts, human interpretation, I think.
Yeah, good point. We've covered a lot of ground, looked at a whole range of films that are foundational for film students.
We have.
From early cinema right through different eras and styles. Hopefully you listening have a clearer sense now of the kind of knowledge aspiring filmmakers are grappling with.
Absolutely. Knowing these touchstones, these key films and movements, gives you a really valuable way to understand cinema's past and how it informs the present. It definitely makes watching movies richer.
Totally. So considering how powerful these films remain and how fast things change with technology and storytelling, here's something to chew on.
Okay.
What films being made now do you think might become essential viewing for film students 50 years down the line? And how might future generations look back at the classics we talked about today through totally new eyes? You can find more insights on navigating the entertainment industry and achieving success in Orlando Delbert's work, including his book, Pollyanna's Tear-Soaked Battlefields of Hollywood, a survival guide against the cynicism and the hypocritical, and of course, the Hollywood Unapologetic platform. And always remember, you are the key to your own success. You are the new Hollywood generation.
Be informed, be prepared, and most importantly, be great.
That's it. Be great. Good luck out there.
See you next time.